morning. This is Kelsey from Kels Reads Things at Anna Porter Public Library in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And today, on this marvelous Monday morning, I'm going to be discussing with you Clockwork Prince. This is the second book in the Infernal Devices series by Cassandra Clare. And if you've not seen my previous videos, this is the prequel series to the Immortal Instruments series. In other words, it takes place approximately more than 100 years prior. I'd say close to 120 years prior to the events in the Immortal Instruments series. That being said, I'd like to go ahead now and discuss what the genre is. This is a young adult fantasy book with a lot of steampunk themes, as well as very Victorian London Gothic style. It takes place, I believe, in the 1870s. So just be aware of that's kind of the theme and the general setting of the book. It is young adult, and it's not really my place to give age restrictions or limits, but I can recommend what I think the audience is supposed to be, and I will say this is a more mature young adult series. Not to say that younger teens or even middle grade students couldn't read it, that's not my place to say, but I will say it does have mature content. Nothing too adult fantasy in nature, otherwise it couldn't really be a young adult book, but I will say it's probably for a more mature audiences. There are romantic scenes as well as graphic violent scenes in this book specifically, and in general in Cassandra Clare's series, like as a whole. Okay, all that being said, I'd now like to dive into the plot of this second book. If you have not read the first one, then I would recommend you go ahead and read it, maybe then watch my book review video just to see what my thoughts were, and then you're welcome to come back and you can at least watch this book review video, because I won't be giving much away about the book specifically, just talking about the major plot points, the purpose of the book, and some of my thoughts. If you don't like spoilers at all, then I would recommend going ahead and reading the second book before you watch this video. Again, not that I'm going to purposefully give anything necessary away, but I do like to discuss things that I liked, as well as some things that I think are important about the novel. All that being said, I'm finally going to dive into the plot. So, Tessa Gray is our main character. We were introduced to her in the first book, Clockwork Angel. She has been saved by the Shadowhunters, but she also ended up saving herself as well as her friends in the end of the last book. She is curious as to currently the whereabouts of her distrustful brother, and her heart is also caught between two Shadowhunter boys who could not be any different, but whose loyalties could lie no further in each other. What's a talented warlock girl to do? Or at least that's what Tessa believes she is, and we found out a little bit about that in the first novel, but some of her past is still a mystery and still remains to be seen. And while Tessa is dealing with her own internal battles, she's also facing the threat of having her home stripped away from her and her friends, the other Shadowhunters that live there, as Charlotte Branwell and her husband have to fight for the right to rule the London Institute against the disconfident and challenging Benedict Lightwood. He proclaims to the Crave that she is not fit to rule due to the events that occurred in the previous book, and he challenges that if she cannot find Mortman by a 2-week deadline, then a woman it just isn't fit to rule, according to him. So unless they can locate his whereabouts by next week, our Shadowhunter friends may not even have a place to live, and they may lose everything, including each other. What's going to happen? Will Tessa be able to decide between these two boys? Will she be able to find her brother? Will she be able to learn who and who not to trust? And finally, will they all be able to find Mortman, who we found out in the previous book was a villain? You can find out by reading Clockwork Prince. Okay, so that's the general plot point of this book. That's kind of the major themes of what is going on, or at least the major events of the book. There is a lot that occurs in this book, and there are a lot of human emotions. I empathized with a lot of characters, and a lot of histories were explained, at least more thoroughly than in the previous installment. So I felt for many characters. I definitely empathized with some, and I wasn't even really anticipating doing that with at least a few characters. So I won't really say much about that, but I will say there were a lot of heartfelt feelings and a lot of histories kind of explained to where I understand the character more thoroughly, including Will himself. As you all know, Will is one of the major love interests between Tessa and Jem. Jem is the other love interest that she's kind of battling where her heart really lies. And we now kind of, after reading this book, I definitely understand Will's history more thoroughly. I understand his motives, and I also can see why he has reacted to things in the manner that he has, and it's explained why he is the way he is. So I can understand him more thoroughly this time. I have more patience for him, and if you were like me previously where you weren't as big of a fan of his character, I can say thoroughly now that I am. I even admire him, and I'm sure once you read it, maybe your opinion of him will change a little bit too. Information is very necessary. I also learned from this book that you can't really trust very many people, especially in a steampunk fantasy book. There is, especially by Cassandra Clare, because there are twists and turns in this novel at just about every chapter, so that definitely kept me thoroughly entertained. So I really felt for Tessa and her situation. I felt for Charlotte and Henry as they were battling their own internal battles with each other, as well as trying to prove to the Clave that they are completely capable of ruling, even though locating Mortimer has been a near impossible task as of late. We found out that he is one of the major villains of this story in general, and tracking him down for whatever reason, mostly because he's a mundane, has proved to be not very fruitful. There was a lot of torture in this book, a lot, in a manner of speaking at least, so I do want to warn readers about that. There is quite a bit of violence in this book, and characters are kind of pushed to their limits in a way. Not every character, of course, but there are some scenes that are a bit graphic in nature, so I do want to alert readers of that. I was thoroughly entertained. It was very much an action-packed second installment. It also, as I mentioned, dug into some characters, and we got to understand them more thoroughly because we have more information about them, and we understand more about their past and their motives, and again, why they've made some decisions that they have and why they interact to things in the manner that they do. So in general, getting to know characters a little bit better, as well as having a lot of intense plot to back them up, is always exciting. So I appreciated that about Cassandra Clare. Thank you. So the ending, I won't say, obviously I'm not going to give anything away. There were definitely challenges that the characters faced, including internal and external. I will say that the ending ends on a very interesting note. A little bit of a plot twist, if you will. There were some things that were resolved, there's some things that have still yet to be resolved, and there was a big reveal that happened about 75%, if not 80 to 85% through. Something big occurs for Tessa and another character of which I won't speak about because it'll be a big spoiler, but also there is an additional twist added at the very end. So I look forward to reading about that next. However, it might be just a little bit before I can get to that. I'm still currently reading Finlay Donovan is Killing It, a hilarious mystery that has been a page-turner from page 1, from the first sentence. I am taking my time with it though because I want to enjoy it thoroughly. I started it probably about a week and a half ago, and I'm taking turns between listening to the audiobook and between reading the ebook. So all that being said, I thought that this second installment was really exciting compared to the first one. I did enjoy the first one, but again, I understood a lot of the characters more thoroughly. There were so many heartbreaking moments. There was a lot of action and violence that occurred in this book. There were some challenges that the characters had to face that again were against themselves, against each other, and there were a lot of characters that you found out that you really can't trust. And it was very interesting to kind of see that, because that's been a little bit of a continuous theme since book 1. So I liked that that theme kind of followed in this one as well. I, of course, love the setting. I love anything that's steampunk and, Victorian history, Victorian style. So that was appreciated, and I think the author does a really good job with imagery in terms of creating that world for this book series. I always appreciate that about Cassandra Clare's writing. She's very visual in her imagery. The characters, you could really feel their emotions. You could feel their inner turmoils. You could feel their exterior stressors. So that was something I think that she, is very good at writing. And I grew to like all of them more thoroughly, even. I mean, I definitely liked the main three from before. I will say but Will gave me some stressors, and I wasn't exactly his biggest fan, but after this last installment, I definitely really like him as a character, and he's redeemed himself in my eyes. All that being said, because I really enjoyed it, because I thought it was even an improvement from the previous book, I gave it 4.5 stars. Thank you for watching today, and I look forward to next week discussing with you Makeup Breakup, which is an adult romantic series about a girl who wants to run an app that brings people together versus a boy who runs an app that wants to break them apart. Thanks again for watching today. Please feel free to always reach out to me if you have any questions, any comments, or even any suggestions for what to read in the future. I look forward to discussing more books with you then. Have a great one.